There we are.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, are we ready? All right, we have reconvened back into open session at 5:56 p.m., January 20th, 2021. At this time, I'd like to take roll call. Ms. Sharon Nielsen,
Here.
Ms. Jessica Anthony,
Present.
Ms. Pamela Anderson.
Pamela Anderson
Sorry.
is not here, but Pamela Hamilton is here.
You're just as cute. Miss Bill Legrone.
Present.
Oh, good. And I'm here. There were no actions taken in closed session. So at this time, we'd like to stand and salute for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance
To
the
the flag of the
of the
United
States of America
America,
And to the republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Thank you, dear. I understand now why my son is so reticent to try and coordinate band meetings on the internet. All right. Miss Pamela Hamilton, would you like to start off with announcements and comments?
Sure. I actually don't believe I have any announcements and comments. I guess the only announcement I have is third grade reading at Mrs. Dryden's is going very, very well. So that's at Stanford Avenue School. So, but other than that, no other comments or announcements.
In the chapter books, are they reading anything interesting?
We're just we are reading. Yeah,
Miss
we're
Jessica Anthony. Oh,
But sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
do you have any comments or announcements?
No, to question Pamela's statement, are you volunteering as a reading assistant or what's happening?
Yes, yeah, I volunteer in Mrs. Dryden's classroom. It's an hour and a half a week, so it's 3 30-minute sessions. And I read with, she just carves out some kids for extra reading.
Very nice.
I'm jealous. Bill Legrone, do you have any comments or announcements to make?
I have none, thank you.
You are muted.
I have no comment, thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's good to hear your voice. Miss Nielsen, how are you today?
And well, thank you.
Good.
I have no comments.
Okay. It's been an eventful week. We had Martin Luther King birthday on Monday. We had the hoopla going on 2 weeks ago. Today was the inauguration. I personally have found a lot of reason to be hopeful with a teacher in the White House now. So I'm excited. I look forward to the future. Dr. Holtum.
Thank you. I received an email today from Teresa Lytle, who is the principal at Ophir Elementary School, and I want to read it to our board and to our community. It says, "Dear Teresa, on behalf of the Educational Results Partnership, the EPR, I'm writing to congratulate your school community. After an extensive analysis of student data for every public school in California, Ophir Elementary was a clear leader in getting students to grade level and beyond, and has been named to the 2019-2020 honor roll. Congratulations."
Yay.
So I just wanted to do a shout out to Ophir and its staff and our students and parents there for a great job and for meeting and exceeding the state standards. That's a great job. Also want to say thank you to everyone for all their diligence through COVID-19 and all the hard work that our teachers and staff are putting in to educate our kids both in person and in the distance learning model and independent study. It is not easy, but they are doing a great job given the circumstances, and we appreciate their efforts. I also want to commend our district nurse who is working 12-hour days just to keep up with making sure that the contact tracing and ensuring that our students and families know, and staff, if and when they need a quarantine and things of that nature. She did also want me to share with everyone the reminder that we all need to be wearing our masks on campus and wearing them correctly. Also, students, parents, and staff, if you have anybody in your homes that have any symptoms that resemble anything like COVID, take the conservative approach and keep them home. We're having a lot of issues right now with kids who seemingly feel good, but they have family members that are sick, and then they come to school, and then we find out about it, and then we have to quarantine that student, sometimes the entire class, and in some cases, the entire grade level. So please be very diligent when sending your children to school so that we can kind of try to keep our kids going to school, and so we don't have to quarantine classes and grade levels. But other than that, I think we're doing well. This evening, we updated our COVID count on our dashboard on our website, and that's all the announcements I have for tonight. So thank you so much for all your hard work, everyone.
Thank you, Spencer. Janet, do you have any announcements or comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I met with the Curriculum Council, and we are working on looking at what our summer school program will be looking like and shaping up to be. And we also discussed our professional development for next year, what kind of structures we would be doing with that. So those have been some good meetings, and I've been meeting with a handbook committee because we need to do some updates for the DOJ. We're creating a new handbook, and the committee has been very helpful and they're moving along. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Kimberly Tyler.
It is wonderful to be in 2021. I do want to say that it's also been very wonderful that our staff has been able to start the vaccination process. The district office was very efficient in getting the information out to all of our staff members. Dr. Holtum actually even sent us the form that was needed so we could have it filled out when we got down there for the vaccinations. So that's been a great light at the end of the tunnel, maybe. So I think that we're seeing it. And I just am hopeful about that as well. And looking forward to the rest of the school year and next school year.
Thank you. Andrew James.
I have a few things to announce this evening. First, I wanted to update the board in public that we are making good progress with FEMA on the Feather Falls recovery from the fire. We hit a major milestone this week, finishing our damage inventory, which was a big deal. Second thing, their audit results typically come in January for the board, but this year they will be arriving to the board in March due to the extension. We did our audit at the normal time, but the audit firm needed to use the extension due to the numerous things they're having to deal with. And then finally, there was the governor released his budget, and at future meetings we'll discuss the different features more in depth. But the budget the governor has proposed has great news for us for next year. There's a buy down of most of the deferrals. There is a COLA increase, and there are new categorical programs that the governor is proposing. And this kind of goes back before Jerry Brown. Jerry Brown didn't really believe in categorical programs. A categorical program is something where, the government gives you a certain amount of money to do a certain type of program at your school. So the ones that are being announced are things like a mental health program or a educator training program. So we've enjoyed the years of flexibility, but we're also excited about new money. It is still very early. The governor's budget will be revised in May and will be adopted in June. And as you recall, last year's budget at this time was also good news, but then took a severe nosedive. The one thing I wanted to make sure the board understood was that though the governor is buying down deferrals, which is them borrowing cash from the school districts, it's not going to impact the deferrals for this year. It's still going to happen this year. And so we're still going to have to go to the county treasury and borrow money for our May and June payrolls. So just wanted to make sure that was clear that yes, their deferral help is coming, but it isn't coming till next year. That's all I have.
Thank you, Andrew. At this time, the board would like to extend an invitation to interested parties who wish to speak on matters which are school related. Comments or questions may be emailed to backpack@ocesd.net. Please include your first and last name with the email. Comments and questions received will be read into the record or addressed during the meeting. However, comments received without the sender's name will not be shared during the meeting. The Brown Act does not allow the governing board to discuss or take action on any item that is not posted on the agenda. I believe we have the opportunity to include other participants as well. Do we have anyone with raised hands?
I have
any backpack emails?
There's no backpack email, but I do have Barbara Clark who had a question. And then for the rest of the attendees, if you raise your hand at any point during this meeting, at the next opportunity, we will I'll call on you. So, Barbara, I'm going to allow you to talk. Yeah.
Madam President, I do have one email from Backpack to share with the group. We'll let Barbara go, and then I can read this into the record.
Andrew, oh, there we go.
I'm sorry.
Miss.
No, I was just letting you guys know I had a place where I could ask questions because you guys were earlier talking about the hand, being able to find it and the question. And so I was letting you know I had that. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we don't want to do the chat, or there is the Q&A where you can ask me questions since I'm the host of the meeting. But we don't want to get a chat conversation happening. We want the comments to be spoken. So that's why we don't have a chat way to do it. That's why we're asking people to use the raise hand feature in Zoom.
I've experienced that. It can be a mess.
Well, and we also want to make sure that it's that becomes part of the record, because that could be a violation if the chat is not part of the record. So at this time, Madam President, I'd like to read in a email from Elizabeth Parmentier, who is a Oakdale Heights PKK teacher. And it reads, "Hello, I've attempted to contact Mr. Legrone and Mrs. Barnes through email, but have not received any response. What is the best way to contact members? I and others would like to be able to engage in conversations with board members. Emails would be a great way to make initial contact, but you available for phone calls, in-person or virtual meetings. Thank you, Beth Parmentier." And since that email, she did send another email that informed me that Mr. Legrone, since that email, has returned her initial email from today. Thank you.
And I apologize. I hadn't had the opportunity to return her email. I've been really busy, but I do wish her and her family the best during this serious time in the pandemic. And the email that she used to contact me does work just fine. So I appreciate that. It's good to hear from her. Is there anything further, Spencer?
I do not have, I'm in my email right now and I do not see any other comments from Backpack at this time.
Andrew, do you see anything?
No, I don't see anything further.
Okay. Then at this time, I'd like to open the presentation session fiscal price assistant team, the FICMAT, and the FHRA.
Okay. So I'd like to introduce Jennifer Noga and John Von Flew. I've added them to the panelists on this webinar right now. They were the FICMAT team that came a few months ago as a result of our district being having a going concern original budget where we weren't able to meet our financial obligations in all 3 years of our budget. So they did an in-depth study, and they attached to the board agenda is their results of their study, and I will turn it over to them.
Good evening, Andrew. Are you going to have us on video, or is just a
You can share your screen. You can use the video. We can hear you. There you are.
I see it now. Hi. Okay. It seemed like I wasn't allowed to do that earlier. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Holton. My name is John Von Flew, and I'm a Chief Analyst with FICMAT. Here with me today is Jennifer Noga. She's an interventional specialist with FICMAT as well. We spoke before the meeting, and we're still getting used to this whole Zoom presentation type thing, as I'm sure everybody is. And we decided that it was better to come from one voice versus trying to hand off sections. So you get the pleasure of hearing from me all evening. Hope you don't bear with me, please. So we appreciate you having us. Thank you very much for having us this evening, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk about our fiscal health risk analysis that we recently conducted. Before I start off with the actual analysis, I want to give you a little bit of background on FICMAT. FICMAT is an independent state agency created back in 1992, and it was with legislation, AB 1200 legislation, that was brought about to address a school district that went fiscally insolvent. FICMAT stands for the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team. And as our name suggests, we offer operational and fiscal assistance to local education agencies, LEAs, across California. That includes school districts, county offices, charter schools, and community colleges. The majority of our work, thank goodness, is management assistance by invitation and professional development. And that's the work we love to do the most. However, we are equipped and we do work with districts in fiscal crisis and perform fraud audits as well. In the 1819 Budget Act, FICMAT's role was expanded by the legislature to provide proactive role with districts that met certain fiscal distress signs. Those distress signs are routine qualified budgets, disapproved budgets, a negative budget certification, and a lack of going concern. And that under any of those conditions, we are to engage with a fiscal health risk analysis like we did with Oroville City at no cost to the district or the county office. Our engagement with Oroville City occurred as a result of the district receiving a lack of going concern designation by the County Office of Education on their 2021 revised budget. Lack of going concern is auditor or accountant speak. A going concern is a good thing, and having a lack of that is means that there's an issue with the district fiscally going forward. The county office has direct fiscal oversight of the district and had concerns regarding the district's failure to meet and maintain minimum reserve requirements based on an unrestricted funds structural deficit in years 2 and 3 of the multi-year projection, and the projected negative cash flow projected in the general fund for both May and June of 2021. I'm sure you're all aware of those situations. The fiscal health risk analysis tool that we use to in the district was developed over 25 or 5+ years of our existence in working with districts, and it identifies issues in 20 different areas that we have found in other fiscally challenged districts. So we developed it from our knowledge and our working with districts. The tool, side note, our tool is available on the website for districts and accessible for a self-assessment as well. We pull and use the same exact tool that we provide for districts to do the analysis ourselves. So getting to your fiscal health risk analysis, I'd first like to thank Superintendent Holtum, CBO James, and the district staff for their assistance and cooperation through the study. We know it's a very busy and time complicated by the pandemic, and the process couldn't have gone any smoother. So thank you. While the study is usually typically conducted in person, we were able to conduct the study by collecting some documents electronically and interviewing via Zoom over the course of 3 days, specifically November 9th through 12th. And we interviewed district leadership, staff members, and some board members. Subsequently, we requested additional documentation as necessary to fill in our gaps and questions and ask clarifying questions of the district staff. You'll find that our review is focused primarily on the district's 2020-21 revised budget, and it's important to know that it doesn't include any subsequent events or information. It's a snapshot in time based on the trigger of the lack of going concern and our engagement. If you have any questions through this, please feel free to jump in, but otherwise we'll certainly have opportunity to respond to any questions and clarify anything at the end. The report is written in FCMAT's model, which is a deficit model, as are all FCMAT's reports. What this means is we don't focus and tell you all the good things you're doing and give you credit for all the wonderful and hard work you're doing. We just focus on those deficit things, those things that we find out of compliance, and then we respond giving a narrative as to why they are considered in deficit. The report that you have before you is divided into 3 sections. The introduction, which is an overview of FCMAT, followed by a summary, which is an overview and should highlight the important things that you would need to know about the report. And then it goes into the questions themselves. The questions are get into the granular piece of it and are really for the district's direction to identify some of the working pieces. Right between the summary and the questions, you'll find a section that highlights material, areas of high risk and material weaknesses. And we'll focus on those in a minute, but those are high level questions and observations that will elevate the risk of the district. So we've gone through the questions and sections, and if you are trying to get in and analyze it, you'll find that the questions aren't all equal in impact or weight of the report. So we went through and analyzed and weighted each one in certain categories. Categories are of higher impact, and certain questions are even of higher impact. So it all comes into a formula to get your risk assessment, being either high, moderate, or low. And you want it's like a golf score. You want it to be a low score. The higher the score, the more at risk the district is. So if you'll see on page, end of page 10, the district's overall score is 22.1%, which is in the higher area of a low risk range for the district. So based on that alone, we would call the district a low risk. However, certain of the other material and high risk indicators that are presented on page 8 and 9 elevate that score to a high level of high risk. That a couple of reasons why, and they're identified on those pages, is the lack of going concern designation by the county office, the district's failure to meet minimum reserves, unrestricted structural deficit in years 2 and 3 of the multi-year projection, projected negative cash at the end of the year, and that in total raises you to a high level. The primary areas of concern that were identified in the report are straightforward. It involves a structural deficit in the district's multi-year financial projections. With this deficit is expected to erode unrestricted reserves to less than $650,000 by the year in 2022-23. This is partially due to the impact of a declining enrollment. And we also want to point out that the cash position, negative cash position at the end of the year again. At the time of the study was triggered, the district did not have a plan to address this and needed to develop and implement a plan as soon as possible to reduce spending and eliminate deficit spending, balance the budget, and maintain or restore reserves. In preparation to enable the district to withstand uncertainties in the future, this needs to be done immediately. Ultimately, it is the board's responsibility to maintain the district's fiscal solvency. Board direction and actions should ensure that this is a priority. Another area of concern mentioned in the report that could compound the district's issues are that the district remains unsettled with the Teachers Association for last fiscal year, 1920. Again, this was at the time of our engagement. You may have taken action since then, and no settlements had been reached for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. As a board, we ask you to keep in mind that before you take any actions on these settlements, that you must ensure that the settlements are affordable and that both the superintendent and CBO have certified that the district can pay for the proposed settlement. The main takeaway from this analysis is that the district resolves its structural deficit, a need to maintain a balanced budget so that it can maintain reserves to ensure fiscal health of the district in the future. To do this, district staff must provide you with the information, but you, the Board of Trustees, are ultimately responsible for the district's fiscal solvency. Although we performed this study during COVID, the COVID pandemic, and the severe economic uncertainty that is causing much to our surprise, California's economy has fared well so far. Andrew spoke a few minutes ago about the governor's proposed budget is more favorable than we expected. However, looming concerns and uncertainty remain that will impact your funding, including how the state will continue to weather the pandemic, and specifically for districts in declining enrollment, the sunset of the student attendance protections. As a board, again, you are ultimately responsible for the direction of the district, both academically and fiscally. It is important that board members maintain accountability both through regular evaluations of the superintendent and personal accountability by making sure you seek training to ensure that you have the knowledge to provide proper governance, understand compliance requirements, as well as fiscal accountability. We understand that the district, as it should, has already started to repair findings in this report. We expect that the low point of the district well-being is during the trigger, the identification of the lack of going concern, and the trigger for this report. Going forward, we recommend the continued use of the report to identify areas to improve. Most importantly, for you focusing on the balanced budget, not only in the future, but in the future, currently, but in the future years. Districts that do well once these things have been identified, take heed to trends and adopt and implement a plan to address them. The earlier you address these issues, the smaller the adjustments that can be made and the bigger impact that have in future years. We suggest that the district do self-assessments using the tool every 12 to 18 months so that you can identify your risk areas and any other areas that need to be addressed. Knowing that your biggest concerns currently are in your budget, deficit spending, collective bargaining, and internal controls, we recommend that those areas are addressed now. And as those areas are resolved, other areas may emerge as your biggest concerns. It is very difficult for any district to perfectly maintain all areas at all times. So keep working with it and revisiting the tool and addressing the areas that are found. Immediate corrective action should be focused on your deficit spending. Correcting this would affect many of your existing concerns. Unless that's corrected, it would be very easy for a district to lose control and end up being a state loan, needing a state loan. We've heard many a times that it started off a small problem that just compounded and compounded and eventually got out of control. So the sooner you address it, the easier it is to address, the less intrusive it is to address, and the bigger an impact it'll have going forward. You don't want to lose state control. You were elected to control the district, to govern the district, and you don't want to have a state administrator, county administrator come in and start telling you how to run the district. We're entering a time when multi-year projections and cash flow have never been more important. The second and third year out is most problematic for most districts. So making decisions early can have a greater impact on those out years, and it's critical for the district's success. With that, we've gone over verbally the findings. Again, your report has a summary of these findings and then goes into detail that you can address and ask questions about and follow up on. Are there any questions for us, the FCMAT team?
I have a question.
Sure.
Does your team offer any suggestions in concrete resolutions?
So yes and no. We've worked with, in working with the district through this fiscal health risk analysis. We have been working very closely with the district staff and kind of identifying some of the things that need to be addressed, and we do provide some of those within our analysis. We also would try to do our best. We don't want to give specific and directive. It's still your district to manage. So we're looking at the end game as to, you need to be fiscally solvent. Backing that up, you need to make sure that you have your essential required reserves at minimum. You can, as a board or as a district, raise your reserves higher, but the state requires minimum reserves. Backing that up even further, we recommend a balanced budget and addressing your deficit spending. How you do that, can vary between districts. Some districts can do so by looking at certain programs. A lot of times in districts of declining enrollment, it is right sizing the district. So getting the right staffing ratios in place. Districts, I don't recall exactly what the percentage is for Oroville City, but most districts are in the 85% plus range of their budget being in staffing costs. And so a lot of times you can't get to the cuts that you need to get to without addressing staffing. Just not enough in the other categories to accumulate to do that. But each district is different. So you really have to get granular with that. Speaking for Jennifer and I believe I can speak for Jennifer on this, is that we found that the district, to have the competence in their staff to do and address these issues. I don't think there's any concern about the ability of the district to give you good information and make good recommendations. And so my first go at that would be to suggest that you talk to them about those. The county office is also supportive in those manners to give you guidance. And then with us, we FCMAT, we don't go deeper on this analysis at this point. If there was a request to have us back in to look at things, we could dive deeper into that, but that would be at a cost. And so, but I think your things can be handled just by looking at the resources you have in the district and the staff you have in the district. Another thing with right sizing the district is facilities. I know you've gone through a series of closing down school sites, and that's something that you may want to look at as well. In a declining enrollment district, staffing and facilities are those areas that become underutilized.
So it sounds like it's in our hands now to take the information that you've given us to determine how we're going to resolve that. And the only way that you'll come back is if we ask you to come back and we pay for it. And if we don't get it under control, you said you don't want us to lose local control. At what point do we lose local control?
If you have to take, excuse me, yes, I failed to leave out. The other way to get us back is to lose local control, and we come back is because if you're borrowing money from the county or the state, not just for cash purposes, but if you're borrowing money based on a state loan, then we come back and monitor. So yes, we really did it's a high level analysis on this. Well, we got granular in some areas, but we really leave it to you to resolve. These are, like I said, proactive measures. So it really is avoidance of fiscal insolvency. And we feel that gives you some direction on how to do that. At this point, it's not a deeper intervention. We look at it like the academic interventions where there's multi-levels of intervention that happen. And this is the first level of, well, the county office is the first level. And then if they raise the bar high enough, then we engage with this type of a review.
And I do want to share with the board and thank you, John, for sharing all that good information with us and with our board and our community. The two things, and I just want you to get confirmation from John and Jennifer on this is when I read the report, the two biggest pieces, and you've kind of alluded to this, is our declining enrollment and our deficit spending. And John made the recommendation that we come to the board with a plan for that. And I've already started to share some of the ideas that I have to address both our deficit spending through the natural attrition of personnel and some of the other plans we have, because like John shared, 85% plus of our budget is personnel. And so if we want to make a dent into that, we've got to look at right sizing the district. And I have a plan for that helps us do it naturally, but gets us to where we need to be years 1, 2, and 3 without going draconian on our approach. And the other piece is I've been sharing with the board is ways that we can retain our kids, because in this community we've had 10 years of an average of 2% decline in enrollment. 2 years ago we were flat, and now we're kind of going down again. Part of that's part of the pandemic, and we hope that bounces back. But we are putting together some plans. I'll be bringing future plans in the next couple of months of how to kind of look at better retention and different plans I have to maybe promote our districts and market our district, because we do have great schools and great programs. And I shared earlier, our honor roll for OFER and things like that. So I just wanted to share that and thank John and Jennifer for supporting us and our board in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I had said before, complete confidence in the ability to address these things. And there you have a plan started already. And as a board, make sure that, ask good questions and accountability of the staff. And they have, like I said, we believe that they have the competence and ability to give you the correct guidance and recommendations.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to move on to OCESD's response to the FICMAT. Andrew?
Yeah. Let's see. Make sure I'm unmuted. Well, I wanted to thank John and Jennifer. It was a pleasure working with them. I wish it was under different circumstances. However, both very professional and knowledgeable people, and I took a lot away from the process. A lot of the items in their report, there were a number of deficiencies. So what we did is we went ahead and wrote down all the deficiencies in our second report, and then wrote a brief response to each item, so the board can see kind of where we're at on these. We agree with the findings they found, for the most part, and we are working on a plan to address deficit spending, because that's sort of the major issue. The deficit spending and how do you get out of that cycle. I also wanted to say that there are some things that were findings where you'll see changes in some of the presentations I'll be doing going forward. One of the things was indirect costs. I changed the way I allocated indirect costs, and I started that with the first interim budget. And with future budget adoptions, you're going to see a multi-year cash flow and a few other things that are going to be some more in-depth tools to help judge our fiscal solvency. And we'll certainly be looking at doing a self-assessment using this tool in the next 12 to 18 months as well. I felt like the process was really strong. There were a lot of really in-depth questions, and they went through a lot of documents really in depth. So Spencer kind of already summed up this part of it. We are addressing deficit spending and trying to find plans to do that, and right sizing is definitely part of that calculus. Do you guys have any questions for me or Spencer regarding the findings and our responses?
I do. Yes. I've got a couple of questions just going through the responses that you provided us. Specifically, let's see, 3.9 balance sheet accounts in the general ledger. Are they reconciled at least each interim report and year-end close? And so the response was that OCESD staff are reconciling all of these accounts at least annually, if not more often. So we're doing it annually, but it looks like they're requesting that we do it or suggesting that we do it at each interim report. Or is that something that we will be doing, or is that not something we'll be doing? I'm confused.
So the payroll liability accounts changed when we switched financial systems. So we're in the process of doing that monthly. Just sort of setting up that initial process. And it's been a challenge with all of the things going on, but that's been the plan. It just hasn't worked out. So we've been, I look at them pretty regularly, but staff are or will be reconciling those on a monthly basis.
Okay. Also, go down my list. 5.3, has the district fulfilled, and does it have evidence showing fulfillment of its oversight? What didn't seem to be a response on that one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't get the updated version here for you. This is regarding charter school oversight. We reviewed the charter school oversight ed code, and we are performing charter school oversight appropriately. At the time of the interviews, we did not have evidence to prove that. So the charter school oversight has to do with the fiscal oversight side, which I felt like I was able to prove. Hey, I would look at every audit and a budget adoption for our two charter schools. It had more to do with, how are we doing annual site visits with each of the charters? We didn't have evidence of that. And though I know we did it, so it's one of those things that we're doing it properly. And part of the confusion, John Bohannon, who is the assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction last year, should have been the person answering those questions, but he has since moved on. So there was a little bit of a gap of information there, and there was only so much time to, gather all this information. And like I said, we weren't able to find any hard evidence of us fulfilling those requirements. But we are fulfilling those requirements and will continue to. And my hope is that from the programmatic side, they will be keeping track of those items.
Okay.
I would like to share with the board that since this report and since this was brought to my attention, I continue to work with Janet on that oversight. And since then, I have, both Janet and I have been over to Stream to do visits with Stream Charter School, which is one of the schools. The other one is Ipacani. And so we're looking to resolve some of those concerns and kind of provide more oversight. But I will share that John was doing that and was very regular in keeping in compliance with all those. We just didn't have the information to verify it at the time because we didn't have access to some of the things that he would know at that time. So thank you.
I think I have one or two more. Give me a second here. Internal audit on a 15.9. Does the district have an internal audit process? And the response was that we don't have a plan. You don't plan on implementing internal audits at this time.
Other than doing the self-assessment, we don't really have a plan of doing an internal audit. We do an external audit annually. It's kind of one of those, from my perspective, due to the size of the agency and the number of players involved, I don't see why we would do a more formal internal audit. Other than, we're looking at doing that self-assessment tool, which will have a lot of these. I mean, it's probably very similar to an audit. But we do not do internal audits. And again, I think it has, some of these, you have to consider the scale. This is the same test that LA Unified would take, whereas maybe internal audits in an agency that large would be different. But here, you have one payroll person, one HR person, one accounts payable person. So there's not a lot of people involved.
Okay. And then my last question is 16.8 on the superintendent's evaluation. So the FCMAT comment was that they were unable to locate any evidence of that, yet the response was that it's been happening. What, has that been documented, or is there a plan now to document it publicly so that we have that evidence?
So
yeah, Spencer can handle that.
So that formal evaluation has taken place in closed session at the end of each year that I have been in the district. And in the closed session, it does mention the closed session minutes. It does mention that my evaluation does take place. And I know that our current, Sandra, Pamela, and Bill can attest that I am evaluated both through a written and a verbal evaluation in closed session on a yearly basis.
So does it just need to be reported differently in the minutes?
I would suggest that we just need to report it better as we report out into open session after close or something like that, just so that it's recorded, that it's taken place.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
And I think Jessica had questions.
Yes. I'd like to get a layman's explanation, I suppose, on the reason for such a surplus for the 2021 and 2022, and then a deficit in 23. And I apologize for this overly simplified inquiry, but in a basic term, if you have more money, that if you have a surplus of money but you have a debt, you don't have a surplus of money. So I guess in a layman's explanation would be good to help me and maybe other people that need it explained, not on a higher level, but maybe, you know, something understandable, if you could.
Sure. Yeah. So what happens with our budget and what happened with this particular budget was we had a certain amount of money going in reserves. And if you look at the 2021, you're looking at 12.2, correct? So if you look at the surplus, you have, hey, we've got $3.6 million left over. But in the second year, you can see it's gone down by $1.1 million. And that is because we're spending more money than we're bringing in. So it's like I had a savings account and I have a car payment, but the car payment is more than the amount of money I'm earning on a regular basis. So I'm using my savings account to help pay for that car, right? And then as you see in the third year, our reserve drops significantly. And that has to do with there's a hold harmless on the ADA that we have for 2021 and 21-22, where we get to use the ADA from 1920 for those 3 years. But in 22-23, we are now back to our normal old ADA. And unfortunately, our ADA has dropped significantly since 1920. This year we saw a 7. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you let them know ADA is our student?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ADA is the average daily attendance, or another measure would be an enrollment. Our enrollment is way down. So we were able to use the ADA, which is the way you calculate how much money you get every year. That's the number of days of school a year students go. So we were able to use the 1920 enrollment and ADA for the funding for 2021 and the funding for 21-22. But in 22-23, we have to use the count of students from 21-22 because we get to always pick the higher of the 2 years. So in the projection, we project enrollment continues to decline by 2% a year. So you have a major slide and you lose a lot of revenue. So any excess money you had is now spent. Anything that was in your savings account is now pretty well gone because you basically are making less money in that year than you were in prior years. I don't know that I was really very clear. I'm trying to think of a better way to explain this.
Okay, so then I guess that could lead to items answered 7.1, 8.2, 8.3, 10.1, which says we're working on items. And I'd like to know what specifically if we're overspending, what are we going to stop spending?
So one of the items that we've been looking at is as we are declining in enrollment, making cuts to staffing levels.
No.
So that we have the appropriate class sizes. I wasn't sure if you were shutting me down. So we have the appropriate class sizes. So you have the appropriate number of students in a class, and you don't have class sizes that are very small. So as Spencer had discussed before, through attrition, we're not doing layoff this year. We're able to reduce the amount of staff. And that's something that, and again, you have to sort of go back in time. This was a budget that was created in May, adopted in June, and then revised again in August. So at that time, we did not have a plan for reduction in staff or had how we're going to deal with declining enrollment. But at first interim, we did. So that's one of the main things we need to do is right size the district, like John had mentioned. And then also we need to look at how we use our facilities. This is something that as a board, I've talked to you about many times. We have a lot of facilities, and as we were a district with 4,000 kids in the 90s, with only two more small additional schools, East Side and Bird is all we had extra. And we've since built Ishii, and we've since closed East Side. We've closed Bird. When we gained Feather Falls, we closed it. We're going to need to look at real hard at, hey, what's the path forward? Because we can't continue to operate 4 elementary schools and 2 middle schools when we're getting to 2,000 students or less. So those are some of the hard questions that we're going to have to answer as a group. I don't have all the answers, but I think just like we did before when we closed Bird Street School, we will convene a facilities committee that will start to look at these things and see what's the path forward, what's the right move for the community, because that's a very sensitive topic that none of us take lightly. No one gets into this to close schools or reduce positions. It's not what people want to be doing, but that's certainly what we will do if we need to. Other structural things, those are things we're continuing to look at. And the other thing Spencer had mentioned a couple times is, how do we stop the trend of decline in enrollment? How do we get more competitive? How do we offer programs that are going to draw people into our district? And that changes the overall trajectory of the district as well when you start to gain students. So instead of having too few students, you have too many. It's a very different economic climate.
Still going with this, Spencer had mentioned that we won't be doing any layoffs. Can you explain to me how we're going to do cuts to staffing?
Yeah, I can explain the cuts to staffing this year. So we're talking about, we're not doing layoffs this year, which would be for next school year. You have to do them, I think, by March. You have to have that all done.
Right.
For the next school year. So what has happened is we've had some staff who have left the district mid-year this year for various different reasons, who we have not replaced. And again, our enrollment dropped by about 7%. Next year, we know we will have some retirements. And on the board agenda today, we have a retirement in an early tell retirement option for staff to take, where they'll tell us, hey, I'm going to retire at the end of this year, and they'll get some money back. But that'll help us to plan. But we also are looking at taking any additional staff that we have where maybe we don't need X number of teachers at a certain grade level, and having them do intervention type work or reading coach type work. There were a number of different ideas being tossed around using some of the COVID funds that are designed for learning loss mitigation. So these teachers would be doing learning loss mitigation for next year and possibly for the year after that. So those positions come out of our pool of general ed teachers and are paid for with money that is restricted, that we can only spend on certain things. So that was the strategy for next year. And as we look at our enrollment, and as it continues to decline, you look at the next year after that. Well, we know we need to cut some more for the next year, and that's all part of our what we're planning and trying to figure out.
Andrew,
so does that kind of answer how we got to a year where we needed to make cuts, but we ended up not having to do a layoff directly, but we are eliminating a lot of positions? Maybe that makes more sense. So that we aren't going to have as many teachers at the different grade levels next year, because we were able to get rid of those positions, either because people have left them or because we're putting them in, a few of them into different types of positions.
And putting them in those other positions, we can pay through them through the COVID money. So again, it helps our deficit spending because we're using a different pot of money to pay for those positions. And then over the course of 3 years, what we hope to do is through natural attrition and being creative. And I'm not saying that in future years and out years, we may need to do additional layoffs. But right now, we're trying to be creative because we have this extra money and we have this extra need. And so we think we can get to where we need to be, because right now, when we look at our projections, and hopefully they improve, but right now, when Andrew and I talk, we need to lose at least a dozen teachers between now and 2023. Well, on average, we lose anywhere from 3 to 6 teachers to retirement. Last year, we lost 12. This year, it's probably going to be less than a half dozen, but we think that we can do natural attrition and get to that number. And that number of 12 teachers, if you take our oldest teachers through salary, benefits, workman's comp, and retirement, and they cost the district well over $100,000. And if we eliminate those costs, then over the next 3 years, we figure we can get to where we need to be and right size, like John was sharing, right size the district. And we may be a little more aggressive than that if we need to, based on, when the governor's budget is revised. But right now, we feel like we can get there doing it year to year with a real plan that doesn't hurt kids. Because when we eliminate teacher positions, it raises our class sizes. And so we want to do it in a gradual piece, so it doesn't affect our classrooms, or it doesn't affect our classrooms the least amount, because we don't want to go strong right now and then have really large class sizes, or and then get into issues like that. So we want to do it gradually with a real plan that supports kids. And I think our plan right now that we're forming, and I'm sharing with you, and that we've shared tonight, is allows us to support kids and also get rid of, and I wouldn't say get rid of, but get to the natural attrition piece that we need to, and even more this year, even more than I anticipated, because I do have some principals that want to use some of their categorical money that, again, is not part of the general budget to kind of support some of these positions. So all this kind of helps our bottom line and our deficit spending. And Sandra, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
You're okay. Just a quick question. The budget next year and the year after, 3 years out, does that include current level labor costs? Or does that take into account any possible attrition?
So there's some level of attrition calculated, like a normal level of attrition calculated in the budget for the out years. We try to measure those things and come up with a conservative estimate of what we think, because you can't ever really predict attrition savings. That's some crystal ball stuff there. But yes, it does account for that to some level. And additionally, part of the issue with the original budget was the magnitude of the cuts was so great. And this is something I discussed with the board at the time, was we didn't feel it would be appropriate to put in, hey, I'm going to cut $2 million worth of stuff and not say what that is, not have a plan. And we didn't have time for a plan. So that's why one of the reasons we didn't have a lot of cuts in the original budget, but in the first interim budget, a lot of those things are there already to start to help to get back to a balanced budget type approach.
All right. Thank you very much.
I have another question. Sorry.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
How is the way that they take attendance now during hybrid learning, how does that affect our attendance levels, like an average daily attendance? How is that calculated?
So the way that they take attendance now has, the California state government added some new regulations about how attendance taking needs to happen. Especially when we're talking about distance learning, they wanted to know if students were present and also if they're engaged in person, direct, like on a Zoom call type meeting, and also with learning with something you've assigned them on a daily basis. So you're really getting into, I don't know how the state on the fly made up brand new homeschooling attendance rules, but they did. I don't know why they couldn't use the old attendance rules for homeschooling, which was, a measure of work done. But they wanted to make sure students were being seen, and that was part of the attendance rules. As far as how that impacts our budget, has no impact on our budget at all, because this is a hold harmless year. Our attendance this year will be based on last year's attendance, and so will next year's as well. So this year has no impact. You're tracking student work to make sure that you're doing what we're instructed to do by the state, but it doesn't really have a fiscal impact per se. Do you have more questions?
Not yet.
Okay. And as far as when you kind of get into the granularity of some of these cuts, like I said before, these are things that we take very seriously, and we try to get ideas from all the stakeholders or stakeholder groups. So people should be not looking forward to, but these types of, like the facilities committee is going to be coming back, trying to get input from people so we can, as a group, make good decisions about the future of Orville Elementary.
So Andrew, since we're on the topic, let's go ahead and move on to subject C, 2020, 21-22 enrollment projections, and listen to what you see in your crystal ball.
Well, it's not much of a crystal ball. The enrollment projections, and I'm going to kind of read through it so that everybody understands what we're looking at. You'll see on the top of this, you have CBEDS 1819, CBEDS 1920. This is an enrollment projection. So for starters, enrollment is a measure of students, not a measure of how many days they came to school. And the CBEDS count is a measure of students you have live and in person in early October. So every year, there's a measure taken. It used to be done on paper. I was around for that too. And you count how many students do you have in your school and now it's for the whole week. So let's just take one of the rows. Let's take kindergarten. So in 1819, in that week in October, we had 234 kindergartners. The next year, we had 283 kindergartners. In 2021, we had 239. And then you can see the final two columns are projected. So it's the 21-22, we project 238, then 22-23, 226. So the projected enrollment, because we have a 2% decline in enrollment on average every year, is why there's a difference in those years. You have a built-in 2% decline of the class each year, and the kindergarten is based on an average of the class sizes. So if you go to the total, you can see our CBEDS enrollment in 1819 was 2311. 1920 was 2381. And if you remember, I believe that was the year that was last year, right? We had picked up a lot of kids, and we were real excited, and then they all started to disappear. Then if you look at 2021, we're at 2155. So you can see we've lost a significant number of students from 1920 to this year, a major loss in students. And then a 2% decline is that 2114, and then down to 2090. So if you look at these enrollment projections, you can see that we're continuing to have a decline, and that in between 1920 and 2021, we had a major decline in enrollment. The bottom section of this just highlights the changes for the 2021 CBEDs and the 21-22 projected enrollment. So you can see, oh, here's the 2% decline as these 41 students from the 2155 to the 2114. The hope is that, and there are a few things that are going to kind of throw a wrench in these enrollment projections coming up. The first thing that, and there's no way for me to really accurately project them. So I'll just describe them to you. One thing is we believe that this year we had a lot of kindergarten and potentially first grade students that didn't attend school because they did not want to participate in distance learning. Our hope is that when school opens, hopefully next fall, when school opens back to normal, knock on wood, that those students will return and our ADA will not decrease by 2%. We're hopeful maybe we'll have an increase in ADA again, but we don't know what the impact of that is going to be at this time. Another thing that's going on that is we're yet to see the impacts of, and I have yet to project it, but Stream Charter School is going to be expanding their program and adding, I don't recall, Spencer, the exact number, 100 to 150 students to their program at Stream.
They're going to go in 2 years or a year and a half from now. They're projected to go from 275 to 400 students. And so that could be a deficit loss to us, potentially at around 100 or 125 students. They do pull from kids all over Oroville, including Thermalito and Palermo, but a lot of those kids are pulled from our district, and so that is a concern of ours as we look to, as I've talked about, how we become more competitive, do a better job with marketing, and look at other programs that we can better compete with our neighboring districts and charters.
So that's another factor that we're working on. That was kind of later breaking news, but that's something that's going to also impact our enrollment projections going down the road, because like Spencer mentioned, Stream Charter does pool a lot of their students, and they actually have a part of their enrollment policy is to give our students priority in their school. So we expect that we'll, of those 125 students they're adding, we assume most of those will be ours. But we're still trying to suss all that out because that's not all done, said and done yet.
So Andrew, just to go back to Jessica's previous question, when the hold harmless period expires and the new year comes up,
oh, okay.
What will the ADA, what will the state be, which ADA will the state be looking at in order to fund ours?
Okay, that's an excellent question. So if we look at, and this isn't a measure of ADA, this is a measure of just enrollment.
Right.
So if we look at 1920, where we had an uptick in students, we went from 2311 to 2381. Even though during 1920, we lost a lot of students. We had students that were leaving the area after the campfire who were here with their families working, or they were temporarily housed in Oroville, found permanent housing, and have moved out of the area. But when the governor came through, or the state legislature came through and said, hey, we're going to freeze, we're going to have a hold harmless. So they're going to let us use the enrollment and ADA associated with that 2,381 students for funding for 2021 and 21-22. So you can see those 3 years are,
Right.
We're like, awesome, great. That's great news for us. But what happens in our budget is in that third year, the 22-23 year, our ADA at that point has dropped almost 300 kids. And we can use the ADA from the prior year as our normal hold harmless, but we still have made a significant, there's like a significant cliff in ADA where you all of a sudden say, wow, what happened? How come your
Right.
revenue dropped off so significantly? But it's because in that 22-23 year, you're no longer held harmless and no longer able to use the 1920 ADA.
So in 22-23, we'd be using 21-22.
Correct. Or 22-23, whichever one is higher. That's the normal
Okay.
way ADA is calculated. It's the higher of this year or last year. And that's to protect school districts from sudden declines in enrollment, to give you some opportunity to make adjustments, because what happens is, to reduce a teaching position, it's pretty much you do the layoff window in March for the next year. So it's a long process for a school district to right size. So having the opportunity to do that by having that built-in hold harmless is very, very important for school districts.
So we'll be losing the funding for 200 kids.
Right. And then the next year it'll go down another chunk and so on.
So, and that is really what Andrew and I and, the rest of the district will be looking at various ways of how we can, improve our attendance. Now, we do anticipate that from this year to next year, like right now, we're at 2155. That's a 7% decrease from the 2381. But we know every district I've talked to in Butte County, along with a number of superintendents from Southern California, everybody's experiencing a decline in enrollment of anywhere from 2 to 5%. And everybody's basing it on the fact that parents are just scared to send their kids to school or looking for other alternatives for the time being. And we are all hoping and banking that 2 to 5% are going to come back. Now, we think that we're going to lose at least 2% of those kids because it's been our trend. And I'll share an example. I've been asking our principals and school secretaries to kind of track informally where our kids are going, so we have a better sense of, are they leaving for other programs? Are they leaving for other districts? And I'll give you an example. Last week, a principal texted me and said, we just lost 2 more 7th graders. And he said, one went to Arizona and the other went to Oregon. And so we feel confident that a lot of these kids are just leaving out of the area. And as you know, California as a whole is experiencing an exodus to several different states. Idaho is a main one. Arizona is another. Nevada and Texas are the 4 major ones that they're moving to from out of California. But now I will be tasked with working with you and the cabinet and the rest of the district on how we can provide better programs so that instead of having those students look for STREAM as an alternative or Butte Core or Thermalito or Palermo, they're looking to us because we are providing a better education and a better culture and a better climate. And I know that we have some schools that are outperforming others, and we want to take advantage of that by expanding those programs and those schools to where people want to go to, which I think will help our percentage loss. Because if I open up another class at another school where people want to go to, 20 students would be, 22 students would negate a 1% decrease, and we would capture that back. And so those are some of the plans, and I don't want to get too far out there tonight because I've shared some other plans with you, but we're not ready to share right now because we're just in the infancy of doing that. But in a year and a half, we have plans to do stuff here in the next 6 months and in the next 18 months. And some of the things that I've been sharing with the community as I talk to schools and principals and things like that is we have not had middle school sports for several years. And I've already inform the principals at Ishii Hills and Central School that we're bringing back schools or bringing back sports.
So Spencer, I don't mean to interrupt, but our next discussion session, subject 7, is an update on discussion regarding school programs.
Mhm.
So as a segue, why don't you go ahead and continue with that?
Okay, so, and I just want to make sure that I'm on the, so we're on discussion item number 7, update to board and discussion regarding school programs and learning models. So this has to do with the discussion I want to continue with the board about reopening our schools to a traditional model. Currently, as you know, we have about 65% of our students, or 67% in the hybrid, coming to school either Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. We have about 30% of our population, and that's actually growing because we're having more and more parents request distance learning right now because our numbers are so high with COVID. So that's probably getting closer to 35% of our kids that are in either distance learning or IFLC, which is the independent learning system. But we know that we have a lot of parents, a lot of students that want to get back into school full time. Now, we know that we are currently in purple. We know that there's a lot of cases within Butte County, and the numbers don't seem to be slowing down right now. But we also know that we have the vaccination that many of our staff members have been able to take advantage of this past week, the second round, and it will continue throughout the rest of this month. And the second round will be given to those staff members the first couple of weeks of February. Now, there's no vaccination right now that we know of that's going to be able to be available to our school-age students right now. We don't know when and if that's going to be available to kids and if they feel that's going to be needed or necessary or safe enough. But we do know that our staff will have the option. It's not a requirement, but an option to have the vaccination. I want to have a conversation with the board to see if they're would like to have a conversation about setting a date in the future to get us back into the traditional model. Several of the districts in our neighboring communities are looking at dates in February and March to bring back students. We also have Gridley that is being brought back or has been in a more traditional model since the onset of this program. They have some of the similar issues that we have, classes being quarantined, things like that, but that's something that's happening in all districts. And so I just want to be able to get the feedback from the board of where you're at. I also will share with you that a number of districts have just told their communities that everything's going to be the way it is or until next year. We're not going to change our model again until we revisit it in the summer months. So a lot of districts are doing a lot of different things, and we have to look at where we're at, where our parents are at, and where we feel we're at as a county as far as our numbers and whether or not we feel it's going to be safe, and more importantly, if I'm going to have the staffing to support those students coming back. Mm-hmm. So I'll now turn it over to the board to give me your feedback on that.
Is this dependent on whether or not we move up in the colored tiers?
This
we
is
experience a reduction in paces.
It is not dependent because since we've been open, we can remain open. And as long as we can meet the thresholds of the state in trying to keep all our PPE requirements in place. There is talk that social distancing with some of the new government monies can be 4 to 6 feet as far as desks and things like that to accommodate what the governor's talking about reopening. There's a lot of even superintendents were emailing back and forth saying, how do you read the this language? How do you interpret this language? There's still a lot of going back and forth, but there's a lot of districts that are looking at going back into the traditional just because the need is there for the education of our kids. It's hotly debated everywhere, and I'm not going to start planning anything until the board kind of says, "Hey, Spencer, this is the direction. This is the date." Some talks that I've had with people is, "Hey, maybe we just take it, month by month, and I just keep this as a board agenda item like I have the last several months, and we just take it month by month and don't make anything formal until we get a clear idea." And that would be absolutely fine. We could also say, "Hey, let's come back after Easter break, which I think ends on April the 12th, and let's make that our shooting date." And we can always adjust that as we get closer, but at least allows me to start strategizing and planning, of how we make that happen. Now, obviously, we're going to have some staff and some parents are going to say, "Let's do this," and we're going to have others that say, "Are you crazy? We need to wait." But I want to get the board's take on that so that I can start to plan on what direction we want to go.
My humble opinion is, according to all scientific reports, the vaccination is 95% effective. Second round is coming up. Our first 1 week off is in February 12th. I think the 12th to the 19th, we have a week off from school. I'm feeling like March 1st is a good target date just to start with.
So I would say it's just a bit later because I think it's what I understand, and again, boy, this is all this non-scientist talking about this, but that you have a vaccine, you wait the 3 weeks, you get, or 4 weeks, depending on which one you get, you have the next one, and then you wait another 3 or 4 weeks, and then it's the 95% effective, which would then put you right in that beginning of April as opposed to March. And again, so someone should check all that, but I guess Sandra and I are probably circling the same idea, is that all the teachers, once all the staff who wants to get a vaccine has had the opportunity to get both doses and to be fully vaccinated, that seems like an appropriate target date.
Right.
I agree
don't
with
mean to
Pamela.
be presumptive. I don't mean to be presumptive, but anyone who has gotten a vaccine and is interested in going would presumably be interested in going back to in traditional school.
Not necessarily, but I think the timeline matches with what Pamela said, that the staff are getting vaccinated right now, and then you have to wait 3 weeks or so before you get the next one. And then you need to wait 2 weeks after the second one, at least 2 weeks before you get that high effective rate. So I don't think we can look at anything earlier than April.
Like,
I mean, we hit a grim milestone this week. This week, 400,000 people have died in the United States. And health officials are saying we're going to see 500,000 as early as next month, that we are still in a significant surge. This is so dangerous. And I don't think that this is the time to even start talking about bringing everyone back into a classroom.
so April 1st, we look at it April 1st.
I would have to, in my opinion, and disagree. It's probably something we should table until next month. We're making all sorts of assumptions about availability of vaccine, the vaccine getting here, the second dose. They can't roll out the first dose. So I really think it's going to be difficult, and we should not make an assumption that the second doses are going to be here and everybody's going to have that vaccination that they want prior to that. So my best advice is we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's table it till next month and have the discussion next month and see what has happened with the rollout of the vaccines and what is the vaccination rate of those that want to come back to work. Because the risk we run is if this goes through our schools and we infect our teachers, our staff, you're going to close the schools. I mean, and then we're going to have a real problem on our hands where we don't even have hybrid available because we have our staff that is ill. So I think we should just slow a little bit and just table it till next month so we have more factual data and not assumptions and presumptions of what may happen.
Miss Jessica.
great.
I have a question about, so what does the staff at the schools say? Do you have a general opinion of what teachers feel?
I think it's like, just like us tonight, everybody has a varying opinion and a varying level of comfort based on what we said. And I think, based on the conversation that I'm hearing tonight, I will take this next month and start working with our staff and maybe getting some more data to share with you. I will share with you that we are getting a lot more substitutes that once they get their second dose of vaccine, that they've expressed interest to come back and work in person in the hybrid model. So that's a very good sign that people are moving in that direction. I will say that I've talked to some teachers that want to come back right now, and I've had others that want to stay in distance learning until this is totally over, and everything in between. Now, I will share with the board that if we were to come back at some point this year, and I do totally support Bill's thinking that we take it kind of 1 month at a time and look at everything. But I will share that regardless of if and when we come back in a more traditional model, that the distance learning model will still be available to students.
Okay, so that's my next question is, right now you have one teacher for both models. For example, Mrs. Yamas at Ophir Elementary teaches 4 days, Monday, Wednesday in person, Tuesday, Thursday in person, and then provides, a little bit of instruction on Friday, in addition to homework for the kids that are not in school on those days. Is there enough, or do the teachers, will they be able to fulfill a full day and distance learning for those that choose to do that? Is there enough people to substantiate that for kids that are choosing to have a different model other than traditional in-person school?
Right, and we do have we have several teachers that are doing what Mrs. Yamas is doing, but primarily teachers are either doing in-person or distance learning. We do have a few at each school that are doing kind of a hybrid of what you explained.
Yeah.
But this is exactly why I'm kind of bringing this to the board, because if we were to move back to a traditional model, I would have a ton of work to do to survey parents, to make necessary adjustments to staff. And again, I will try to limit that as much as possible. But it's going to take a great deal of time and effort. When I did this the first time, when we moved to a hybrid, it took me nearly 6 weeks to get everything dialed in to where I needed it to be. And so that's why I'm just kind of starting this conversation now, so that if we were to go back to there, I'm going to be able to have all the pieces in place and for it to be successful. And so I think it's prudent that we wait another month. I'm just throwing out dates because, I want the board to give me some guidance and direction. Quite frankly, as we stand now, with the numbers that we have now, I wouldn't open up, if I could open up in 6 weeks, I wouldn't open up because I don't have enough time and our numbers are too high. I'm looking at, when I say April, I was looking at the middle of April and, that's almost 3 months away. But even then, I'm still apprehensive about that. But if I'm hearing everybody correctly, and I'm seeing your faces and your nods, that the goal of the district is to hopefully at some point this school year open up back to traditional. But right now we're going to say we're going to take it month by month and analyze it. We're hoping that somewhere in April or May it might be prudent to do that. But again, it might be prudent that we just wait until next year. So
with starting in April, week 1 would not work, as the next week they do not have any school, which is a vacation time.
Right.
So the soonest that I would say would be week 3 of April. That would give them 8 weeks of in-person instruction to finish out the year. So right now you have March, which includes 5 full weeks of instruction. If they were to go back, that would be 5 full days with no breaks. But if we're with the need of 6 weeks to plan or implement, pushing it to week 3 of April seems to make the most sense. And then my last comment, I guess, would be in the beginning of returning to school in a hybrid model to gain knowledge of who is going to go where. I think it was an excellent way to gain information from families as to what direction they wanted to go, so you can gather that data to see where you stand.
Right. So, Madam President, I think we'll table this, but continue to look and monitor and look at possibilities. And I also want to let the board know that, though right now we have a board meeting once a month, as we get closer to this, we can always call special board meetings to discuss this exclusively, at the end of or the beginning of March, if we were to, look at something for, mid-April, just to give our parents and the district time to kind of plan and alter the direction that we're going. So thank you, board members. That's all I have on that subject at this time.
All right, thank you, Spencer. To open public comment to the actions items listed on the board agenda number 8. Extend the invitation to interested parties who wish to speak on items listed on the agenda. Comments may be emailed to backpack@ocesd.net. Please include your first and last name with the email. Comments received that pertain to the action items will be read into the record during this time. However, comments, do we have any emails pertaining to the consent agenda?
I don't have any in the backpack, and if any of the attendees would wish to make a public comment now, they can push the raise hand button and I can allow them to talk.
Madam President, I do not have any emails at this time.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments or concerns, questions by board members on the action items?
I have one on the warrants. The TCI is TCI. I'm assuming TCI is one of our for the schools. One of our educational pieces. I just didn't know what it was.
I believe TCI is a curriculum resource. If Janitor Spencer wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, I figured it is. I just don't know which one it is.
Hold on, or maybe
I
Kimberly.
think it's like on page 3 or 4. I'm trying to look for it real quick here.
Yeah, well, we got the name, so let's see.
It's our science curriculum that we just purchased this last year for the middle school.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question on the tie-breaking criteria resolution.
Any further?
Go
I'm,
ahead.
I'm wondering if this was reviewed with the unions?
It was.
Okay, and they are okay with it.
And I will share that this is the same tie-breaking criteria that we've had for years.
Okay.
At least ever since I was here and before. And so we revisit every year, but it hasn't changed since I've been here. And it's been better through time.
Okay, if there's no further comments or questions, I'd like to get a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as agenda.
I second.
All those in favor? Ms. Sharon?
Aye.
Ms. Jessica?
Yes.
Ms. Pamela?
Aye.
Bill?
Yes.
And that's an aye for me. The motion carries. On to new business, the quarterly report of district compliance with Ed Code Section 35186, Uniform Williams Complaint Procedures. Andrew, do we have any Williams complaints?
The fourth quarter report has no complaints.
Sorry, I'm muted. Review proposed 21-22 school calendar for next year.
So I'd like to share this with the board.
Okay.
The 21-22 school calendar is being proposed. In years past, we've always followed the high school proposed calendar, and we are recommending that we do so at this time. We do have some one concern that's been brought to me, and I'll continue to look at this, is that the high school district has removed the week-long vacation in February. And so that has been removed. It does impact the fact that, we start a little bit later and end a little bit earlier. Those 3 days or 4 days, depending on how you look at those two holidays in February. So that is the major change to that. If the board does so choose to look at this further, we can either table it or amend it if we want to. But at this time, because of transportation, we always try to work with the calendar of the high school to make it easier for us to accommodate that piece. And so at this time, I propose that we
It's up for discussion, so it's just a matter of, okay, well, we'll adopt it next meeting, I believe.
So if you have any input or thoughts, you can share with me now or moving forward, and I'll continue to work with our associations on this calendar to see if they have any input for the board next month.
I understand that this is correlated with the high school schedule. And I know this may be different next year, but right now, the minimum days and days off, I understand some are legal holidays, affect all the Monday and Wednesday kids' schedule. So as a whole, I don't know if that's going to matter for next year, as we don't know. But right now, it's affecting them to the tune of about 17 to 19 hours in the classroom. Monday, Wednesday kids are being shorted 19 hours in the classroom.
Yeah. Schedule A.
And we're aware of that, and several parents have brought that to my attention. It is a concern of mine. I'm looking at ways that we can this year to give extra support or make up for that, some of that lost time. I don't have a remedy for that at this point. Certainly moving forward next year, minimum days are a negotiated item. And so there's a lot that goes into that piece, but we definitely, Janet and myself are looking very closely at that, because there's always that chance that this could, linger into next year. And we realize that that's impacting our students right now.
Awesome. Okay, if there's no further comments or concerns about the proposed school calendar for 21-22, the comprehensive safety plan, we
So
need to approve that.
So the comprehensive safety plan is updated and renewed every year. The comprehensive safety plan includes all of our schools and their comprehensive safety plans. In larger districts, when you have, each school has to have separate plans, but if you're under 2,500 ADA, the education code allows us to have one safety plan that addresses all the schools. And the schools do really have their own safety plan, but we put it all together into one. We have Patrick O'Brien here this evening. He is the principal at Stanford Elementary. He's also the principal tasked to working with all the other principals to update and make changes and updates to our annual plan. And he's here tonight to help answer any questions you may have about the comprehensive safety plan this evening.
All right, good evening. I'm Patrick O'Brien, principal at Stanford Avenue School. I submitted the safety plan after some meetings with the team and also after consultation with Mr. Ken Brown from SIA, which is a compliance review that we work with. So he got a copy of our last comprehensive plan and he looked through it to make sure it was complying with the requirements. There are 11 points of requirements and 2 of those we needed to fix and address in a better way. So the first one was our discrimination and harassment policy. I did have one in there, but it didn't quite meet the requirement that he was looking for. So I used board policy that was existing and I replaced it and he approved that met the requirement. And that's on page 13 if you're looking. On page 14, the discipline data, it's where we document our suspensions and expulsions and other things. So that has all been updated from last year's information, the 19-20 school year. The numbers obviously are quite down because we left March 15th and didn't have suspensions and expulsions happening. Another item that he pointed out was an emergency disaster procedures for students with disabilities. We did not have that component, so we added that in, and that's on page 22. And I flew all this stuff by him. He's our compliance officer, so and it was good for him. And then some other things, I updated some things. Kim Felder asked me to update page 45, which is our school and district kind of contact information. Previously, I had names and titles and all this stuff, and we just moved just to the titles. That way, if people leave or come, I don't have to make more adjustments. Whoever might do this next wouldn't have to make continuing adjustments as long as the numbers all stay the same. And I was checking out part of it towards the end. There's a pandemic illness plan. And I was like, oh, I hope I did that one okay. We did really follow it quite well. When it came down to it, Nurse Terry was really working closely with the Butte County Department of Public Health, and everything that she's been doing with tracking our infections and doing quarantines has all been in collaboration with them. So that didn't need any updating. That's kind of my summary of the plan. Any questions I might be able to answer? Nice. Thank you.
It
No,
looks
thank you
good,
so much.
Patrick. Thank you.
I always enjoy reading it, especially the diagrams at the end, which show all the evacuation routes. So I appreciate your input. You've worked very hard on this. It's what, the third update that we've had on this one? I think it's the third or fourth update since we've started, since we revamped it fully
Yeah,
about 3 or 4 years ago.
I think this is the fourth because this is my 5th year
There you go.
in the district. So
Good times. Good to see you again.
good.
Can I get a motion to approve the comprehensive safety plan for 21-22?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Ms. Jessica?
Aye.
Ms. Pamela?
Aye.
Bill?
Yes.
And Ms. Sharon?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm an aye. All in favor of the approvement of abolishment of classified positions. Spencer?
Okay, so we are abolishing 4 positions at this time. We actually aren't doing away with the positions. We're altering the positions at this time, or altering hours at this time. 2 of the positions that we're looking at are parent liaison, bilingual parent liaison, instructional aid positions they're housed at Wyandotte. And this is part of our DOJ compliance piece, where they've asked to increase the hours for these 2 positions, as well as give them additional trainings so that they can specifically support special education parents in our district, as well as continuing to work with students and families to have better connections to our schools. Both of the positions existed before, but we've added hours and additional requirements to the positions. But in so doing that for those 2 positions, we are now abolishing the old positions that were parent liaison positions that were housed at Wyandotte. And then we also have 2 aid positions that were 3 or 4-hour positions that were in the district that we haven't filled for a while. And because we were trying to save money and we didn't feel like we had the need for them at the time. And the board might ask, well, why are we adding hours when we're, deficit spending and things like that? Well, these positions are funded through Title I, and will continue to be funded through Title I through the site budgets. And the sites have asked for these positions to go from 3 or 4 hours to 6-hour positions, and primarily to help focus on helping kids with our DOJ work with social emotional and timeouts and things like that. So the principals have additional staffing to help kids who need timeouts during the day. And again, it won't affect our general budget because it's paid through Title I and through the site budgets. But what we didn't want to have happen is add those hours to 6 and then still have 3-hour positions as well. So that's why we're abolishing the other ones.
Do we have any questions or concerns concerning this action item? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the abolishment of the classified positions that are vacant at this time?
I move that we approve this resolution for classified reduction and forced due to lack of work or lack of funds.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Bill?
Yes.
Pamela?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And Jessica.
Yes.
Motion carries. All those in favor? Approve the memorandum of understanding with the Oroville Elementary Teachers Association, the retirement incentive. Spencer.
Thank you. So this is almost identical to the agreement that we had with OETA last year. The only changes are the dates. The same monetary value is $2,500, and they have until the first week in April to turn in their retirement. And the reason we do this, and I think I've shared this before, is to allow us for better planning so that we know our reduction in force and how we need to make changes. If they don't do this, teachers have all the way up until the end of June to do this. And sometimes they do wait until that time, and it makes it difficult to plan because our recruitment season is usually March and April. So this is very well worth our money because it really helps us with our planning and with anticipation that we can avoid a layoff that way.
Thank you, Spencer. Any questions or concern concerning this action item?
Did you say the first week in April?
Excuse me, February.
February 5th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve?
I just have a couple questions, if I could, please, before we move to the motion. Dr. Holton, is this already, do we have a tentative agreement on this?
It's not a tentative agreement. We do a yearly MOU.
My line of questioning is regarding this. If we're eliminating staffing through attrition, what is the necessity to know if they're going to retire or not? My objection is still the same as last year. I find it objectionable that we pay people to tell us that they're retiring. It seems like the right thing to do is to let your employer know so that the proper staffing can be done, not, hold it out till the last minute trying to, essentially squeeze us for $2,500 is what it feels like. So if we're not going to be doing any hiring, let's just trash the whole thing and not pay nobody. Let them wait till the last minute if that's what they want to do. And I'm sorry, I'm becoming a little bit cranky. I've been at work since before 6 o'clock, and this has really went a long time for me. So I apologize if I'm coming off in a very harsh way. I'm really not a mean person, I don't think.
Bill, I always appreciate your inputs. They bring us back to reality. Are there any other questions or concerns?
Well, and I will share with Bill that when we started this conversation, it was before we left for Christmas, and we started the conversation with OETA. And at that time, we did not know what direction that we were going to be going. And so had it been later in the process, I understand what Bill's saying, that because we're not really looking to do any hiring, it doesn't behoove us. But since we started this conversation with OETA before Christmas, there was still a strong chance that we were going to have to look at layoffs to get us to where we needed to be. So thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve?
Contrary to what I just said, I will make a motion to approve this because we began a discussion and we should live to our word. So I motion we approve.
Thank you, Bill. Motion a second?
A second.
All right. Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Pamela?
Yes.
Sharon?
I must abstain due to my personal connection, an OETA member as my husband.
Thank you. Jessica?
I don't really have an answer. I think the first time we brought this up, it seemed like it may work. Has anybody come forward?
I've had one person come forward. That was, but it wasn't. I don't think it was related to this incentive. But this has not been formally approved by the board, and so it has not been formally offered to OETA members until it passes through the board.
And so this gives teachers 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks to give their notice of retirement.
And where are the additional bonus funds coming from?
I'll let Andrew.
It just comes from the general fund area of the budget, the same place their salaries are paid.
Okay, 2 weeks is kind of tight, so I'll agree.
Thank you. And I will go ahead and vote yes. Motion carries. On to the selection of trustee representative for district committees. So we have 4 district committees that we typically attend. According to the Brown Act, we are not able to be voting members in any of the committees that we attend. However, as a representative in those committees, we do have a relatively vested interest. The 4 committees are the Local Control and Accountability Program, which is the accounting portion, where community members and the administration and teachers deliberate on how best to spend the following year's monies. The DLAC, the District Educational English Learning Advisory Committee, District Safety Committee, and Support Schools Committee, the SSC. And the SSC are committees that are actually site specific. Spencer, do you have anything to add to that?
No, and we're look forward to having board members be part of those committees to not only hear the input from the various members, but also help drive those conversations. Even though you're not a voting member, you can help drive those with ideas and impressions.
And just because
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And just because you volunteer for any one of these doesn't mean that you can't attend any particular meeting, just so long as there's not 3 members of the board at any particular meeting at any one time.
That is correct. Now, yes. Short answer is yes on that.
Spencer, the Supportive Schools Committee, I'm not really, what does that mean? I'm not quite sure what that means.
I believe Janet might be able to verify this, but I think that's the one that we're working with the DOJ and that work. Janet, can you verify that?
Yes, we have 3 meetings that we are having during the school year. We've had 1, so it would be 2 more meetings this year. And it would be an hour and a half. And what we talk about is either the district data on either attendance or behavior. It could be a wide variety of issues that have to do with equity.
Thank you. And Madam President, are we nominating ourselves, or do you want us to suggest that if we have interest in something? How would you like to do this?
Typically, we just go ahead and volunteer for the committee that we are interested in.
Madam President, I would be very interested in the Supportive Schools Committee or the District Safety Committee.
I'm very
It would be an
interested in
honor
the
to have
supportive
you attend.
schools. I'd love to be a part of the supportive schools committee as well.
If Sharon has a high level of interest in supportive schools, then I would be happy to throw my name in for the District Safety Committee then.
Thank you.
Jessica, do you have something that you would like, a committee that you would like to attend?
To the most interest in me would be supporting schools, supportive school committee.
Okay. And I always attend the LCAP meetings when I'm available, and I've also been very instrumental in assisting with the safety committee, just asking a lot of questions that might head in the right direction. Okay, if there is, so we have myself for district safety and LCAP, Ms. Jessica for supportive schools, and Ms. Pamela for supportive schools.
No,
And
Sharon for supportive schools.
I'm glad somebody's keeping track. Can we have a motion to approve?
Yeah, safety for Pamela.
Safety for-
I move that, I move with what you just said.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Jessica, how do you vote?
Yes.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Sharon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries. On to accepting bids for category 1 E-rate services.
All right. So E-rate is, I don't know why they call it E-rate, but it's federal money that supports schools for different types of technology purchases. There used to be a lot more different categories, but it's whittled down to category 1 and 2 types of purchases. So our responsibility is to put out a request for proposals where we say, here's the different items that we want to have. And different companies come back and say, well, here's what we'll charge you to do that. And then we pick the best of the bidders. So at this stage in a bid contract, we're going to accept the bids in the first, and items A and B. We're just accepting the bids as they've been presented. We're not selecting a winner at this time. And then on C, we're going to award the contract for both of those items. And additionally, we wrote in the description of each of the items on category 1, the district's financial responsibility for these types of items is 10%. And on category 2, it's 15%. This money used to go for things like phone lines, all kinds of good stuff. But now it's sort of whittled down to mainly network infrastructure. The money for the 10 and 15% is in the budget. We feel that this is a huge, important thing that we do at Oroville City Elementary. Oroville City Elementary has an excellent computer network and has for a long time. As a result of some visionary leadership in the past, that has allowed us, when we wanted to do the one-to-one Chromebooks, we were able to plug in new wireless controllers and do it. We already had the structure in place. So it's one of our points of pride is that we do have a very robust and effective internet presence and network presence in all of our schools. So for the first set of bids, and I don't know if you've looked at it, only one bidder bid on the first one, and that was CDWG. And this is just the rating form. So at this point, you have to accept the bids for
Yeah.
category 1.
Can I have a motion to approve to accept the bid for category 1?
So moved.
May I have a second?
I second.
Sharon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jessica, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries. We accept the bid for CDWG at this time. On to accepting the bids for category 2 of E-rate services.
So category 2 had 4 bidders. I'm asking that the board accept the bids as given.
Let me pull that up. I apologize.
So you had AAA, Gigacom, CDWG, and Questivity. And again, we have a lot of bidders, a lot of companies that will, throughout the year, send us, hey, when you're going to bid, shoot it to us. We also post this all publicly in a place where they're like a newspaper and different trade types of things, to get as many bids as we can. But these were the 4 that responded to our request for a bid.
Andrew, this is a little bit new, the weighted score. Can you briefly explain the weighted score?
It's just going through each of the bids and saying, like, for example, it says for the second one down, full RFP, which is request for proposal, quoted. So did they quote everything in the RFP? And we say, yeah. So if they did that, they get a score. And if it was fractional, they get a fractional score. And this is something that we have assistance with through our E-rate consultant. We use Jim Galloway as our E-rate consultant, and he's done our E-rate consulting for a lot of years. So he helps out with, getting a lot of this data together. But ultimately, when we're looking at these bids, you're really looking at price over total score, because the only time you're going to use the total score item is if you're trying to get a bid that isn't the lowest bidder and trying to justify why. So if you had some where, let's say their weighted score was 0 or 1 or something, you could say, well, this doesn't seem like a professional outfit. It doesn't seem like it meets all of the, the requirements we have for vendors. So, that's the only time you're going to use the different other components when you're looking at bids. In this case, it's just all based on price.
Awesome. Thank you for the explanation. It is helpful and informative. Can I have a motion to approve the bids for E-rate Category 2 services?
I move that we approve the bids for Category 2 E-rate services as presented.
Second?
Second.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jessica, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sharon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries. At this time, we'd like to award the contract for categories 1 and 2 E-rate services. It is recommended. Go ahead.
I was just going to say CDWG is the only one who bid on category 1, and CDWG was the winner for category 2.
Do we have any questions or concerns considering CDWG?
No, we've done business with them for many years.
They're pretty good. Motion to approve CDWG for categories 1 and 2 E-rate services.
Make a motion, we approve the item as agendized.
Second?
I second.
Sharon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jessica, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. CDWG is awarded categories 1 and 2 for E-rate services. Next is, I skipped something. Yes. Approve it's way down at the bottom of my page. It's like cut off. Approve the lease agreement with Pioneer Union Elementary School at Ophir.
So this is the lease agreement. Important to note that they've been there several months. We've just been working with their insurance and all the pieces to bring this forward to the board. But this lease will start October 1 of last year and go through the end of this year. They were hoping that they would be able to move back up to Berry Creek next year. That is not looking very hopeful at this point in time. So we may need to extend this. But at this time, this lease agreement is for $4,000 plus utilities for each month, and it runs through June 30th of this year. And I did not put an extension, but we can always bring it back if the board so chooses to extend this through next year, which they have now expressed interest that they may need or would like to extend this through next year, given the fact that their school site still has not been cleaned up by OSHA or Cal OES.
Okay. Do we have any questions or concerns concerning the lease agreement?
I just have a question on 2.1. It's circled the termination date with a question mark.
So,
What is that about?
Yeah, so that was, I'm sorry, I should have had our attorney update that. That was his question towards me. Termination, like, did we want to make it for next year as well? But at the time that I was talking to our attorney, Berry Creek did not know if they wanted to go next year or not. Since then, they've told me that they would like to, but at the time that I brought this to them, they signed it, and so I should have had that. I should have had our attorney update that, but that would have cost us, so I left it as is. Sorry about that.
Whiteout is so much cheaper.
Regarding the receiving of rents, coming from a property management and real estate perspective, does that money cover and pay or exceed, and where does it go?
Andrew?
The rent goes into our general fund. It definitely exceeds the cost of them in being in the space. Right now they're at Ophir, and I think they're taking 2 or 3 portables. Plus they're paying utilities. And with the hybrid distance learning, those are areas that we didn't need for this school year. So we, for us, it's just a win.
I will share that they have 3 classrooms and 1 office space that they utilize at this point in time. We do have 1 additional classroom that would be open for expansion at this time if we were to so choose to add another class there next year. So we do have a little bit of wiggle room for growth, not a whole lot. We also have another portable there that we might be able to revitalize if we needed to do something more. But at this time, those portables that they're using were most of them were just storage.
All right, if we have no further comments or concerns, can I have a motion to approve the lease agreement between Pioneer Union Elementary School District and for the classrooms of Ophir School?
I move that we approve the lease agreement as noted on the agenda.
You have a second?
I second.
Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sharon, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jessica, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries. Next, we approve the school accountability report cards.
Well, in your board agenda, you'll see that each school has a SARC accountability plan. We're required to update and provide a school accountability report card every year. And we recommend that the board at this time approves these as agendized.
Do we have any questions or concern concerning the SARC agreements, the SARC plans? Okay, finding no questions or concerns, I'd like to motion to approve the SARC report cards for all of the individual sites.
I move that we approve the SARC report cards for all the sites.
I will second.
Second?
Second.
Jessica, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thanks, Bill. Bill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Pamela, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sharon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, we accept the SARC report cards